Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Brian Adler, the Academic Vice President here at Georgia Southwestern, and it is great to see all of you here today, turning out for poetry, of all things. It's quite wonderful. Poetry, of course, is the sublime language, it's the holy language, and it's the language of the imagination, and it's the language that uplifts all of us. And the concept of having convocation also falls into all those categories too, where we gather together for some intellectual pleasure and enjoyment and movement in the positive direction of growth. So let me turn the program over right now to Jeff Waldrop, Professor of English, who will make the formal introduction of our guest and speaker.
Thank you, Dr. Adler, and all of you for being here. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the Americus Sumter Arts Council and the support of Dr. Kelly McCoy, Dean of Arts and Sciences, for co-sponsoring this convocation. So, poetry, as Dr. Adler proclaimed. What is poetry, or what makes a poem? Is it rhyme, meter, fanciful use of diction, symbolism that only English professors can decode? Evelyn Waugh claimed that a military order could be poetic, and that a sonnet to the moon could be, and often is, trash. Does poetry include the lyrics that we have stored on our mobile devices, that we sometimes sing along with together or alone? Whatever, it's the words and sounds that give us goosebumps and inspire us to dance and feel like time has been suspended. Poetry is perhaps some sense of all of these things and more. But whatever we mean by poetry, it always begins with the word. That exquisite expression which captures the beauty, the joy, the heartache, and loss of human experience. And this helps us get through life, celebrate, relax, just name a few things. Alexander Pope called poetry what oft was thought, but ne'er so well expressed. Well, today we're going to welcome a guest speaker who spent a lifetime writing poetry or composing poetry. And I'm sure he'll give us his take on what poetry is and that special place that it operates in everyone's life, even if they don't recognize it. Mr. Seaborn Jones was born in Macon, Georgia. He is named after a family forebear, a 19th century congressman, Seaborn Jones, and there's a Seaborn Jones Memorial Park in northwest Georgia that you might have pulled up on Wikipedia. He's also a former U.S. Marine. He's been published in the Chattahoochee Review, the New York Quarterly, Pearl, the River Styx, Rockhurst Review, Southern Poetry Review, and a host of many others. His poems have been anthologized in numerous presses, and he continues to speak and read extensively throughout the U.S. Mr. Seaborn Jones received the Georgia Author of the Year Award in 1998 for his book, X-Ray Movies. He's received 3 International Merit Awards from the Atlanta Review. He's won the Violet Reed Haas Prize for Poetry and was selected as the 1991 Alan Collins Scholar in Poetry at the Breadloaf Writers Conference. Online magazine Poetry Net made him its Poet of the Month for July of 2009. In 2010, Mercer Press awarded him the Adrian Bond Award Poetry for his manuscript, Going Farther into the Woods Than the Woods Go. Many of you might be able to understand and capture that illusion. I won't spell it out. But he has also been nominated for a Pulitzer Prize award in poetry. And without further ado, please help me welcome Mr. Seaborn Jones to GSW.
Thank you for the introductions. Can y'all hear me okay? Can you hear me now? I'm trying to figure out if this mic is omnidirectional, because if it's not, I stay kind of glued to it. I want to begin with one poem that I usually begin my readings with, and then I want to talk a little bit and then read some more poems. But this poem is called Orange. If you take an orange, place it in direct sunlight, slice it into quarters, then remove the seeds and drop them into a small container about the size of an artichoke jar. Add food coloring, cover with aluminum foil perforated with pinholes, then put it in a dark place where no one will ever find it. You will discover that over a period of time, you know something that no one else knows. Well, you may want to think about that or not think about that a little bit, but I wrote that. Well, when I went to college in the early 60s, there were no creative writing schools. Iowa, Florida, not much, not many places to go. I went to Mercer and later to San Francisco City College, but Mercer was a very good school, and I finally later had some good support and encouragement from Mercer, but I started Mercer when I was 17. I went 2 quarters, and then for a lot of reasons I just won't go into, I joined the Marine Corps. My parents were dead set against me being a poet. They just couldn't even bear it. I mean, they were going to take me out of school. They were going to have me put in jail. They were going to have me put in a mental institution, And it wasn't really being very well received by anybody. Nobody could see it. So I joined the Marines. To tell this little story, kind of shed some light. Every platoon at Parris Island is made up of 80 recruits with 3 drill instructors. Those 3 drill instructors are the only people you know the entire time you're on the island. Are there any Marines here? Anybody in the Marine Corps here? Because I don't want to say anything to offend any other Marines, because we're sensitive people about what people say about us, and I can only speak for myself, and I don't want to say anything that would cause trouble after the reading. But anyway, still active in Marine Corps affairs to this very day. I'm in the Marine Corps League. So I go to Parris Island. First or second week I'm there, I'm like every other recruit. I'm in a state of shock. I'm scared to death. The drill instructors are so crazy, you're sure the government has no idea about these 3 people. They could not have any idea whatsoever. They wouldn't have them there. They were dangerous, is quite simply said. So this first or second week, we had two drill instructors on duty, Sergeant Jones and Sergeant Clontz. And I really feared Sergeant Jones. I had everybody, they were just, all of them, was terrified of all of them. On the inside of one arm, he had a coil rattlesnake with "Don't Tread on Me," USMC on the top. The other arm, a fighting cock with U.S. Marines, Born to Raise Hell. And they all carried sticks, sawed-off broom handles. They took the swagger sticks away from them because they would hit you over the head with them. So they got sawed-off broom handles about this long, which were worse. They'd hit you with anything within sight. So Sergeant Jones walks up to me and says, "Well, what are you going to be when you grow up?" And I said, "Sir, a poet, sir." He said, "A what?" I said, "A poet. Sir, a poet, a poet." So he calls to Sergeant Clontz, who's at the other end of the squad bay. He says, "Sergeant Clontz, get down here and look at this thing. You won't believe, well, we got a poet down here." Sergeant Clontz comes flying down the squad bay, skids to a halt and looks at me. And he says, "You ever seen one before?" Jones said, "No, I've heard of them, but I've never seen one of them before." Clontz said, "Wait a minute." He said, "You haven't touched it, have you?" Jones says, "No, I ain't touched it. Don't touch it. It may be contagious." And they both take a step backward then. They're doing the shtick, you know. And Clontz says, "Is it alive?" And Jones takes the broom handle and holds it to my belly, kind of like a stethoscope. And he said, "Well, it's breathing, barely, but it's alive, barely breathing." Clontz said, "I'll go ahead and kill it and put it out of its misery." Sergeant Jones says, "No, I want to see what it does." And Clontz said, "I haven't seen one before. I want to see it." He said, "Make it turn around. I want to see what the back of one of them looks like." So he gave me a about face and then looked at my back and then turned around. They made me take off my cover to look at my head, pull out my pockets, look at the inside of my pockets, look at, just going all over. And then Clontz says, "I want to see the bottom of it. I want to see what the bottom of a poet looks like." So they had me stand on one foot. While they're looking under that, I'm standing trying to balance. I'm scared to death. I don't know what they're going to do with me, and they're leaning down and looking under my feet. And then Clontz gets distracted by something else, and Jones says, "Say me a poem." And I was completely rattled. I don't even know if I had a poem. He said, "What?" He said, "Do you mean to tell me you're a poet and you don't have a poem?" He said, "That's not right." He said, "If you're a poet and you don't have a poem, you'll go crazy." And he was real close to the truth. Well, I forgot all about this until Saturday evening. Apparently they had discussed it with my senior drill instructor. I didn't know this. He comes in Saturday night. He says, "Okay, 8 o'clock, time to write letters. Get out your pens and paper." And everybody holds up pen and paper. He said, "All right, everybody write your letters home to your mommies, except for Private Jones." He said, "Private Jones is a poet, and he's got to write a poem. He's got to write a poem because if he doesn't write poetry, he'll go crazy. And if he goes crazy, I may go crazy. And if I go crazy, I'm going to kill everybody in here." So now it's mandatory, you know. So this went on, I thought, every Saturday. He said, "The rest of you illiterate, uncultured maggots said you can write letters to your mommies and your girlfriends, but you won't ever hear from your girlfriends. They've already found a new boyfriend." So they did, and toward the end of the 3 months, Sergeant Baum, who's a well-read man, would look over my shoulder and read what I was writing. And I did come up with a poem before we left, and they had me read it to the platoon, but I won't go into that. So that was those were my first words of encouragement. And I needed some encouragement. And they have a lot of style, so they knew how to get it across to me. No creative writing skills, but occasionally a poetry workshop would pop up here and there. And when I was 24, 25 years old, I lived in Athens, where I worked for a television station, and Coleman Barks, poet, did the Rumi translations. You may be aware of him. Coleman had a workshop. We would meet at different people's houses. One evening it was held in the home of an Episcopal priest, and we had about 30 or 40 members at that time. People would shed away as time went by, but Coleman was late. In fact, he called from Atlanta, and he was with James Dickey, and he said, "I'm late, I'll be there, just wait, I'll be there in 30 or 40 minutes." So we were waiting. We were all nervous. You know, before you read a poem, if you've never had one workshop, you're nervous about that, and you don't know what to say to people, and everybody was making polite conversation and trying to say the right thing and do the right thing. So this is what happened to me. This is called the workshop. It was held in the home of an Episcopal priest, a crowded room with a woman seated on an ottoman, reading from The Wasteland and discussing Eliot's theory of objective correlative with another woman who insisted the true poets were Joan Baez and Bob Dylan. The priest had just started a conversation with me about villanelles when the door to the hall swung open, and there it was, the dog, staring at me with lust. Before I could move, it charged across the room and locked onto my leg. A 60-pound bird dog, determined to have its way with me or die. The priest cleared his throat, shifted his weight, and began reciting, "Do not go gentle into that good night," while the dog held on with wild resolution. I pushed and I kicked, but I couldn't free myself. I turned red and became speechless. Everyone watched out the corners of their eyes as if they didn't acknowledge it, it would cease. But it didn't cease, and I began to wonder if everyone thought I had initiated it, or that it was somehow mutual. I moved away from the priest, dragging the dog across the living room. I dragged it out the door and got loose on the steps. But by the time I reached the car, it was on me again, around my waist, my arm pinned to my side so I couldn't reach my keys. Cars were passing by, slowing down. People were pointing and gawking. Finally, I got the door open with my left hand and squeezed inside. But the dog was jumping up, hanging its head inside the window, lapping my face until I got the engine started and drove away, watching the rearview mirror, the dog chasing me, becoming smaller and smaller with curves. So, some poems are just there for the taking. Every word of that is true, except the dog did not follow me, but I have poetic license. It's fiction. Wallace Stevens said poetry is a supreme fiction. The title of this poem is "Why Listen to Strangers When You Can Listen to Me? I'm stranger than anybody. I feel too close to myself, I spend too much time minding my own business instead of meddling in other people's lives. I spread treacherous rumors about myself. I leave threatening messages on my answering machine. I need the courage to upset other people instead of myself. I need myself as a friend, and at this age it seems like I would be someone I could turn to. But the face in the mirror says, "You have come too close. Back off. You better find somebody else to mess with." This going farther into the woods and the woods guy, I think Mercer really did a beautiful job on the cover. You can't tell from there, but these letters are embossed. And read a couple of poems from that. Life is so fast. I mean, there's just one thing to do after another, and everybody's so stressed out. It's just not normal not to be stressed out. But so going farther into the woods kind of touches on that in different ways. But my life is a getaway car in reverse. The weather runs a fever, triple-digit moons. I'm equatorially confused. My hair is already dead. Road rage in the kitchen, serrated verbs, concentric voices, double-barreled blue eyes, a smile showing too many teeth, traffic light lipstick, a recurring dream that's never the same, haunted by wordless thoughts, curriculum of fears, medication versus meditation, music as emergency, chain gang smoke bang, high-speed oven on bridges curve, the alarm clock speedometer hits 90, my mind strips gears, coffee and gasoline, my nails are dead but painted and growing still, memory disappears through libido's trap door. The future always repeats itself. This is a poem, the title is The Red Horse. Y'all familiar with the painter Chagall, Marc Chagall? Okay. When the woman in the museum looked at the Chagall, she said, "But what does it mean? I don't like art where the artist hides the meaning. Flying fish, man with goat's head offering a bouquet of fireworks to an upside-down bride. Once I was pulled over by the police. I had laryngitis, and all I could do was make a sound like a foghorn. When I tried to write a note explaining my condition, I realized I couldn't spell laryngitis and handed them a piece of paper that said, 'I have Larry.' They passed it back and forth saying, 'What does he mean? What does it mean?' Maybe I should have handed them a drawing of a violinist with no head. Or like the clerk in the store, when I asked the time, responded, 'I don't know, I'm just hired help.' Then presented me with a peacock feather. What does it mean? Maybe there's a way to tell time by peacock feathers, something buried in the mythology of hired help, circle of children pointing feathers toward the moon. I feel about the woman in the museum the way she feels about Chagall. What does she mean? What does he mean? The peacock spreads his fan of fireworks. It is time. So much confusion can revolve around just one word, Larry and laryngitis. Just, you know, if I hand them a note and I say I have Larry, I'm thinking, do they think I have Larry in the trunk of the car? You know, I don't know, but they finally, that's true also. Eagle. I kick in the cockpit's door. I'm hijacking you to freedom. I'm the Alcatraz man of birdland. My tongue is a switchblade snake. I have swallowed the hand grenade's pin. I have a bomb inside a wind-up doll. I have 3D tattoos. I have been convicted for sexually harassing myself. I know your name. Your name is my name. I know where your children are. Your children are my children. We are on our way to freedom. Drink champagne. Ignore turbulence. Dance in the aisles to six-shooters with wind-up dolls. Because this is what freedom pretends, and because this is an American poem, which is an eagle that flies out of its own beak. I have no idea how long I've been reading. Does anybody?
It's not quite 30 yet. So.
No, almost 30 minutes. Okay, I'm going. Work. Each morning I fit my body like a jigsaw puzzle, piece by reluctant piece, into the world where face down on the floor to flex my back, then up on my hands and knees. I stretch to my feet like evolution, an upright step toward the invisible predator we call pain. I was doing all this stuff, was making a will and a living will, and trying to figure out how to get my house in my daughter's name and all this stuff. And I thought, I'll just go ahead and hold a seance for myself before I die. So I don't have to do that after I die. Just go ahead and get that over with. So this is holding a seance for myself before I die. Squeaking doors and swaying chandeliers precede my appearance. Then the room goes dark, except for my face, lit by a flashlight beneath my chin. My parents gasp, my children weep. I take a seat at the table where they wait. I tap my finger once for yes, twice for no. They ask if I have money. I tap twice. They sigh with disgust. They ask if I'm returning permanently. I tap twice. They sigh with relief. I whisper, I love you, I love you. Their chairs squeak like doors. They sway like chandeliers. They may even remember I'm not dead yet. This thing about poetry, and I really appreciated a lot of things that were said before I got up here. Poetry isn't what I do, it's what I am. I can't help but do it. Let me read this poem. Becoming an artist. I always heard that artists became immortal, so I became an artist. Only thing is, I thought people were saying immoral, not immortal. That if I were an artist, I could be immoral and even have the power through my work to make others immoral. I don't want to live forever. Okay, I love dogs. I'm going to read a serious dog poem. Dog. A dog carries her heart in her mouth. She brings it to her master if it were a stick or a ball to be thrown and fetched. Each time the master throws it farther, he throws it across a lake. The dog dives and swims and brings it back again. Wet and breathless, she lays it at his feet. This time the master pays no attention. His mind has drifted. He wants to kill something, maybe a spider or a bear, maybe his mother or father. Maybe he wants to kill himself. But his mind drifts again. Now he wants to love something, or remember something, or forget something. His mind is far away, too far for even the dog to retrieve. He turns toward home. She follows, her heart between her teeth. That's a difficult kind of poem to write. If you ask me if I hold grudges, I'll tell you no. And I'll believe it when I tell you. I believe I don't hold grudges. And then I'll sit up straight in the bed at 2:30 in the morning and think about something somebody said to me 10 years ago and go, I can't believe they said that to me, you know what I mean? So, it got me. I used to subscribe to a journal because I worked with snakes, zoo curator. I read in the Rattlesnake Conservation Committee had written, rattlesnakes tighten their coils into a striking posture and remain motionless, sometimes for a week. And this is called The Grudge, and it's prefaced with that. Words coil under a tongue, sometimes for years. A diamondback sentence with hemotoxic adjectives, neurotoxic nouns, verbs that strike faster than the speed of sound. An 8-foot sentence crawling out of a mouth, its shedded skin hanging from your lips. Every time I give a reading, Judd insists that I read this poem, and I never read it, but I'm going to read it anyway. It's called First Words. Just trying to think where it was published. I don't guess it matters, really. First Words. My first word was milk, and the world replied money. Then I said skin, and the world again said money. Then I said fire, air, earth, and water, and the world echoed money, 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 money. I called out mama, daddy, and the world answered money. I said love, and love whispered money. I said clothing, I said shelter, the world said money. I said war, I said peace, the world again said money. I said religion, and religion said money. Then money itself spoke, and when it spoke my name, and I repeated the name, spoke its name, and I repeated the name, money, money, and the world said nothing. How am I doing on time? Got
It's like 36 minutes.
36 minutes. So we're coming up on time.
It's Seymour College.
Huh? Okay. women and money. It's the sock left in the dryer and whether to walk 3 blocks back to see if it still exists that gets you. Or putting your head in her lap just when she decides to switch channels. It's what's on channel 2 that bothers you. A police chase instead of your head. 3 Coke bottles and 2 cigarettes will get you nowhere. Somewhere, another man in another room is holding your sock and can match it with nothing. I'm going to read this poem anyway. It's called Telephoning Ginsberg. I lived in New York for a couple of years, and I was packing with my wife to move to Macon. And we had already called the trail of the semi people. They were coming the next day. And, you know, the madness of moving. And I got a telephone call from Charles Plymell, who Cherry Valley Editions, who published my first book, and he published Ginsberg and Burroughs, and he and Allen Ginsberg were very, very close friends. I didn't know Ginsberg. So I get a frantic call from Charlie. He said, "You've got to call Ginsberg and see him before you leave New York." And we went back and forth. I wasn't all that comfortable doing it. You know, Ginsberg was just bigger than life to me since college. You know, I was around 40, but I thought, this man's been an idol and everything else to me. But I did call him, and Charlie said I should call, I told him. "I don't have time to see my own mother. Why see you?" he answered. "But if Charlie says so, it's okay. 2:30 tomorrow afternoon, Lower East Side." Tomorrow came, and so did the movers, a day early. A small, wiry man driving a semi from Alabama. "This here New York City?" he blurted. "Yes," I answered. The Empire State Building framed in the window behind me. "That street down there safe?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "My 10-year-old boy's down there. Ain't nobody gonna mess with him, is they?" "No," I said, "I don't think so." "I know damn well they ain't," he snapped, because he's got a .45 pistol stuffed down his britches. Then he started in the living room, taking the paintings down, while I called Ginsberg to tell him I couldn't make it. "That's okay," he said. "I don't have time to see my own mother, and I'm packing for the Orient. Let's just talk over the phone," which we did until everything in my apartment disappeared, leaving me in an empty room, sitting in the lotus position, talking with Ginsberg, while everything I owned was in the hands of a child with a gun, and his father, who was probably pulling into a truck stop in New Jersey, screaming, "Is this here America? You think anybody gonna mess with my boy?" No, they ain't, and I'll tell you why. As I was reading that, didn't realize how topical that is now. But actually, I think that poem, Ginsberg's a New Yorker, because so he's going to say things. "I don't have time to see my mother." Actually, we had several conversations over a period of 4 or 5 days, and he was very, very nice. So I don't want to give the impression that Well, I could read My Personal Life Is None of My Business, or this poem about being a heathen, you know. Well, okay. It's called The Verge of Saying. All my life I've been on a blind date with myself, not sure what to wear, what to expect, what to say. Unsure in a world of high fashion, designer landscapes, designer sunsets, sky with matching water, trees with matching grass, and me with my simple clothing woven from the hair of my enemies, my humble shelter, a cabin made from the bones of my friends and family, my table set with chopsticks and painted skulls filled with rice and feathers, my limited vocabulary consisting of only one word, a word I can't ever remember, but I'm always on the verge of saying. I think that started out with, start reading these 19th century French poets, and I'm going to read the title poem of the book, Going Farther into the Woods Than the Woods Go. He sits at his table, pours a cup of coffee, and through the window he sees the same trees hanging around his house that were there the day before. He takes a sip and wonders what they will do with their lives. Will they go into the status quo, turning white, brown, yellow, green, providing shelter for birds, shade for hares and foxes? Or will they submit to vines, experiment with moss, get hooked on fungus, run off with a storm, drop limbs, cause injury, become nothing but logs? Or will they show ambition, become intimate with famous architects, become polished floors, stately mantels, elegant banisters, overhead beams in mansions or cathedrals? Or will they become ordinary tables like the one where he sits, unpainted chairs with splinters? He pours another cup of coffee, takes a sip, and wonders what he will do with his own life. Maybe he should join the trees, stand outside in the sun and the rain, the wind moving his hair, turning green, yellow, brown, white, birds on his outstretched arms, lambs and wolves asleep at his feet. The Peaceable Kingdom, is that what it's called, is a theme in art, painting, and literature. And so this is just a variation on the Peaceable Kingdom theme, which I wish everything could be like that. Two more poems or one more, or am I done? Am I finished?
Why don't you give us one more?
Okay. I'm going to read a quick one. Title is, I Feel So Good I'm Changing My Name to James Brown. I'm sitting in a restaurant in North Platte, Nebraska. Sitting at the table opposite me is a couple, business executive and wife, vacationing west from Toledo, no doubt. The woman holds up a sign that says, going to Boulder. She flips it over and it says, want a race? Clean windshield and open road ahead, Jughead and Veronica in the rumble seat, and Jughead figuring time and mileage. Let's see. If Jane had 7 apples when Bob was 5 years old, how long would it take the train to go from Boston to Baltimore if you were 1 inch tall? Thank you.
Will you be willing to field a few questions?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure. Mhm.
A couple of quick announcements, or a few quick announcements before we leave, and then we're going to have a few minutes for Mr. Jones to field some questions. One is that we have copies of his most recent volume of poetry, Going Farther into the Woods, up here, and that he will also have a book signing at 1 o'clock in Java City Cafe. And then the final announcement is that the Friends of the Library, Lake Blackshear Regional Library here in Americus, will be hosting a presentation by Mr. Jones this evening at 7:30. Okay, so I'll we've got time for about, say, 5 minutes worth of questions. If you could keep them short, so I'll turn it back over to him for a few minutes.
I can't see y'all. I got these lights in my eyes.
How did you know you were a poet?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Sorry, I apologize. I have Larry.
Oh, good.
How did you know you were a poet?
Well, my first, I just say semester now, we're on a quarter system. My first semester at Mercer, I was in a play. I got a large supporting role, and I was taking a course in the Romantics, and I really got interested in Keats and Coleridge. Ben Griffith was there, taught that course. And at the same time, the Beats, Allen Ginsberg and Ferlinghetti and all of those people were beginning to get in the mainstream of poetry too. And at the same time, I got a tremendous interest in Robert Lowell and Retke and Elizabeth Bishop and those poets. There's a convergence of things at one time. And let me think how to put this. I just fell in love with it. I had to write it. And you can't learn to write it overnight. You have to read a lot, or at least I couldn't. But I just knew that was it. I knew I'd have to find another way to make some money, but it was what I was. And the only people that understood it were those heathens down at Paris Island. They got it. But it just, that's what college brought me. If I had gone straight into the Marine Corps, I would have never taken that course in the Romantics. I'd have never been in this play directed by a very professional director, head of the drama department. I don't know if I'd been reading Ginsberg. I don't know what I'd been reading, but I still love it. Can't help but do it. Mm-hmm.
Mr. Jones, are you aware of the humor in your writing as it comes out?
No.
Or
No, I'm really not.
it just comes out?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because it showcases the meanings, so it kind of shadow boxes them so beautifully.
Well said. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it say that again. But it does. I was trying to figure out what it did to the meaning, but you're saying it showcases it. Yeah, that's
Well, it provides a backdrop to draw more attention to the
there you
to it, I
go.
think.
Yeah, I agree. I've never quite known how to. Somebody else had the hand. Uh-huh.
I would like to ask you to classify your poetry in like 2 words. How you would define it?
Can you say that again?
Just about your poetry, how you would define it to people in 2 words.
How about 1 word? Okay. I think surrealism. I think would y'all say, humorous surrealism, but I've gotten surrealism. You know, I read that poem about Chagall, and actually I had a long correspondence with Chagall. And when I was 26, he invited me to come visit with he and his wife, Valentina Brodsky. So I got on a ship and I went through the Bermuda Triangle and a bad storm at sea. I didn't speak a word of French from Le Havre down to Marseille and up, and got there on the day we were supposed to meet. And I went to his house that morning. I think it was 10 o'clock, left at 5. But Chagall, the reason I'm mentioning this is Chagall would never let anybody identify him. I'm not an impressionist, I'm not a surrealist. I don't want Freud into this business. He said I sleep very well without him. To go your way, you know. So, but things are what they are, you know. I wouldn't know what to call Chagall's work. I would call him a surrealist, but he wouldn't want anything to do with that. But surrealism. And there are other things. This is some narrative poetry too. Narrative surrealism.
That's fun.
Mm-hmm.
One more question? Okay, well, thank you again, Mr. Jones.
Thank you. Thank y'all.